Homage to the Buddha, the Pure One. Homage to the Dharma, the pure teachings. Homage to the Sangha, the pure community. Hello there. I'm here to talk about the Dhammapada tradition, its teacher, Koio Samadhi, one of its monks, Vasu Bandhu. If you want to know, I'm going to do another video about how I came in contact with this group, so if you're interested in that, just wait for that video to come out either shortly after this or like within a day or so. I'm doing this separate video because this is going to be a very long video, and I apologize for that. I'm sending this out to multiple monastics through Facebook and other places, and I'm also going to send this to the Arizona Faith Network and the Parliament of World Religions and other religious organizations, hoping that you will please watch this through the end because it is very important. It has to deal with someone that a lot of you know, Bhikkhu Vasu Bandhu, and his tradition and the religious appropriation and the religious fraud that they have been committing. At least the tradition has been committing. I don't know about Bhikkhu Vasu Bandhu so far as the let me get into it. There's so much, so I'm going to read this off a phone to make sure that I don't forget anything, so forgive me for that, but bear with me and let's get into this. So, I'm here today to talk about the Dhammapada Sangha and its teacher, Koio Samadhi, who's appropriated the Zen tradition of Buddhism and practiced religious fraud. Why he's appropriated the Zen lineage and committed religious fraud, I don't know 100%, but I do know he's committed religious fraud for monetary gains and authority, influence, and power, as he is the creator, leader of the tradition and also head teacher. Mr. Koio, he uses the language of Zen Buddhism as well as the robes of Buddhist monastics to trick people into believing that he is part of an actual Zen lineage. We know that he is tricking people because he does not honestly explain that he is not part of any tradition, which I will get back to in a little bit, or that he is self-ordained, which is also a big thing that I will get to as well. He doesn't even explain that self-ordination is not accepted practice within Zen Buddhism, and Zen is a lineage based on tradition, with every school having something similar to this right here, called a Kechimyaku, or something similar, something that basically outlines the lineage and lineage through the teachers, etc. So you have something that goes from here, Shakyamuni, and goes all the way through different teachers and to yourself. So yeah, the Kechimyaku, it traces the lineage from Shakyamuni Buddha through the various patriarchs, ancestors, and cures teacher to student. And we have this because lineage is so important to Zen Buddhism. Lineage is important because it helps preserve the Dharma. Lineage acts as a safeguard to guarantee that the core teachings of Buddhism are passed down accurately from generation to generation through the lineage of recognized masters. It also gives guidance and authority. By belonging to a lineage, a Zen practitioner has access to a teacher who is considered a reliable source of knowledge and guidance, having themselves received the teachings through that lineage. It can give community and belonging. Lineage creates a sense of connection to a wider community of practitioners who share the same lineage and values, fostering a sense of belonging. Spiritual development. The lineage relationship is seen as essential for deep spiritual development, as a student can benefit from the accumulated wisdom and experience of their teacher and the lineage they come from. It also affects even basic stuff like our monastic clothing. Lineage dictates the style of robes we wear. I can tell if a monk is a Chan monk, a Tien or Sion monk just by the robes. Even the three Zen sects, the three Japanese sects, the Obaku, the Rinzai, and the Soto, just by looking at the cases that they wear and the robes, like their sleeve lengths, even that, I can tell whether they belong to one of those three. But Mr. Koio, by claiming to be part of a Zen tradition and dressing up in monastic garb, he, and by extension his students, are trying to give the impression that they have access to the knowledge and traditions of Zen. He is alleging, or allowing the students to presume, that he has inherited the teachings and authority to pass those teachings on, as well as the authority to ordain monastics and laity. He is also allowing them to believe that they are fully ordained Buddhist monastics in the Zen tradition. In Zen, after years of practice as a layperson, one might become a novice monk. Then after many more years of training, one might be given the chance to teach under the watchful eye of their teacher. After that, one might be given Dharma transmission and be allowed to take students on their own and teach on their own, and the whole process can take more than 10 years, and receiving transmission is not given. So how did Mr. K become a Dharma teacher and start a Sangha? Did he follow that position? Did he start from lay to novice? No. Mr. Koio, he went to a secular Buddhist meeting where he made the intention to start a Sangha, and he named himself teacher. Mr. Koio was not ordained a priest, nor did he go through years of religious training in a Zen monastery, or receive transmissions from a teacher, or permission to teach, or permission to start a Sangha from any Zen tradition. We know this because when looking into the claims that Mr. K makes, none of them can be verified even remotely. It is quite apparent that he has never trained, also because of his lack of understanding of basic Zen principles, ceremonies, and traditions. For instance, his use of Bhikkhu as an honorific title for Buddhist monastics who follow his use of Bhikkhu, which is an honorific used for Buddhist monastics who follow one of the three venues. This special honorific is used only for fully ordained monks that follow the Vinaya. Hence, that is why Japanese monks are called Obosan, Bozu, Zoryo, since outside of just two small temples, Japanese monks do not follow the Mahayana Dharmaguptaka Vinaya. By not using the title Bhikkhu, married monks show both a respect for the Vinaya-following counterparts in Buddhism and also an honest transparency in acknowledging the difference in our vows. This transparency means that religious fraud is avoided. In other traditions like Korean Zen that have transmitted Dharma teachers who are not ordained monks, they also make the distinction between lay and monastic and never use the title Bhikkhu. Why is this important? Because Mr. Koio self-ordained he ordained himself and gave himself this title Bhikkhu, which is not something that the Vinaya, the rules that dictate Buddhist monastic life, allow. And then decided that he would ordain other monks and give them this title as well, which can equate itself to appropriation and fraud. It's similar to, it's not the same, but it is similar to when an academic, you have a medical doctor and an academic doctor, and how an academic doctor normally will not use the title doctor outside of academia. so that no one gets confused. That's how the whole Buddhist world, chooses to. That is how many of us see, like Bhikkhu. We don't want to be confused with Bhikkhu, the monks that come from married traditions, stuff like that. So, in the same way that the academic doctor won't use the doctor, we definitely make sure that we don't use the term Bhikkhu. And also because we are not Bhikkhus. So I decided to because I heard various things. One, just trying to find out where he trained, stuff like that. Initially, I was told Soto, and then Chan, and then his student Bhikkhu Vasu Bandhu told me that he trained in Soto. So going through and trying to find where Mr. Koio did his training. I first contacted Hokoe Pavone at Nanzenji. Then I contacted Shobo Genji Temple. Those are both Soto Zen temples to see, and they are in Argentina, where Mr. Koio is from, and where his first temple is at. He turned his dojo into a temple. I also contacted Buddhista Fo Guangshan, and to see in case he did Soto Zen training outside, I contacted Soto Zen International as well. And we find, after contacting all these places and other temples as well, that he has not that he has no connection to Soto Zen tradition or Chinese Chan tradition. He was not ordained as a Zen priest or a Bhikkhu, nor given Zen transmission. If he wants to start his own religion, that is fine. But he just can't call himself a Zen tradition. That is religious fraud, especially since he is charging people money for his teachings. And he's charging people for Dokuzen, which is also called Sanzen. Dokuzen or Sanzen is an intimate conversation with your transmitted Buddhist teacher, where they will give advice to the student to help him with their practice based on, one, their own practices and also the lineage that they belong to. Mr. Koio calls this venerated practice a heart-to-heart and charges for it. If he wants to do this, and if he wants to be a Zen teacher, that is fine as well. But he should then study with a Zen tradition, become ordained, and if there are things he does not like, then once he's ordained and in the tradition, then he can change those things from the inside. Not as someone who's not a part of the tradition at all. So when we contacted the various Argentina Soto temples and other Zen temples as well, it was confirmed that he was not given the authority to teach or ordained as a priest or a Bhikkhu or anything like that. And I contacted these people because at that time I did not know that he was self-ordained. I found out later through his student Bhikkhu Vasu Bandhu that he was self-ordained. He doesn't make any reference to it on his website. All right, so still without any authority to teach or having practiced in the temple or anything, or having even, any type of training, teaching training, or anything like that, Mr. Koio decided to start his own tradition, his own religion, with him as the head, based on his own whims, desires, and he calls it Zen, to attract people interested in the tradition and to defraud them. If he was honest, he would immediately show that he has no connection to any Zen tradition. He has multiple references to himself being a Zen master, but no reference to the fact that he is self-ordained, or that the title of Zen master was self-administered. It seems a very dishonest venture designed to defraud potential Zen practitioners. Whether online or fast in person, Zen temples and Chan temples will share their lineage out of respect for both the potential practitioner and also respect for the lineage itself. They allow the new Zen practitioners to know what tradition that they are taking part of and the validity of their lineage. But Mr. K's Dhammapada tradition cannot do this, so instead, what he does is he makes vague references to temples. He claims that he studied in Argentina and Asia, but we can find no record of it at all. In his claims, he never once gives a temple name or a teacher, and what's most important, he doesn't give time of training. When we're talking about training, we're not just you went and you sat and did a meditation classes for a couple of days. That's not the type of training we're talking about. This is training to be a priest, training to be a teacher. This is years of training. This evidently, again, is done to fool those with little or no information about the Buddhist and Zen traditions, Buddhist religion and Zen tradition. This is one of the reasons why I say that many who have signed up for his courses online have been lied to by either outright lies or lies of omission. When investigating his website, there was no link to ordination or training or affiliation with the Zen temple or lineage, but there was a link to their refund policy, which is very telling. This group uses what I see as a twisted definition of religious freedom to justify their tradition. When I asked Bhikkhu Vasu Bandhu, who I will call Mr. Vasu Bandhu because he's not a Bhikkhu, if it was okay to lie and deceive people for monetary gain and religious influence and power, as his teacher had done, he emphatically stated yes. Because of religious freedom, people should be allowed to do whatever they want. He also went on to state that any religion that didn't allow members to do whatever they wanted was fanatical, authoritarian, and fascist. Mr. Vasu and Mr. Koio say that they can call themselves a Zen tradition and use the robes and fool people into believing that they are Zen tradition because of religious freedom. To me, this is not the case. This is not religious freedom. This is religious fraud. As much as I am adamantly for religious freedom, I am adamantly against religious fraud. To deceive people and to use the Buddhist religion for monetary and social gain is ethically reprehensible. Why is it religious fraud? One of the reasons why is because he's charging people to take part in teachings and to listen to his lectures and to be a part of a tradition that he does not belong to. Or to tell them that they're part of a tradition that he does not belong to, I should say. One of the many reasons why I am doing this is because I am deeply saddened by the thought of honest people interested in Zen Buddhism being fooled and charged by this person to learn about a Buddhist tradition he doesn't belong to. These honest people are coming to him with an earnest desire to learn about the Zen tradition, and instead of learning an actual Zen tradition, they are being led to believe that the whims and ideas of Mr. Koio is a Zen tradition when it is not. I also find it troubling that we have somebody who comes from a tradition of religious fraud representing Buddhists in the Parliament of World Religions and the Arizona Faith Network. I am not trying to take away Mr. Koio or Mr. Vasu's religious freedom, nor am I trying to end the Dhammapada tradition. I am trying to stop religious fraud. The tradition should be free basically to practice what they want to the extent that it doesn't harm people. And that it doesn't become religious fraud. They shouldn't call themselves Bhikkhu, tricking householders and believing that they are full monastics, and they should not call themselves Zen, fooling people into believing that they belong to a lineage they don't belong to. Mr. Koio can continue to teach what he wants to teach and continue to lead the tradition without calling himself a Zen master. On his website, Mr. Koio says, the impetus for his starting this community happened at a secular Buddhist meeting, which I said earlier. He proposed to this group of secular Buddhists that he was going to create a group. If he had made a secular Buddhist group, I probably would not be making this video. I do not know how a religious order was born out of a secular meeting. But that's a question, I guess, for another time. But if Mr. Koio wants to start his own religious movement, that is fine as well. He can be like the Wan Buddhists, who don't also have a traditional lineage as well, connected to Buddhism. But they make it known that they don't have that lineage connected to Buddhism. Well, the Dhammapada tradition is similar to the Wan religion in being a new Buddhist movement or whatever. The difference between the Wan Buddhist tradition and the Dhammapada tradition is honesty and lack of religious fraud. The Wan Buddhists have complete transparency. A lot of his ideas about the Buddhist monastic tradition are contrary to the teachings of Buddhism and Zen. Mr. Koio is perpetuating these ideas and claiming that they are Zen, even though they're actually his own made-up tradition. One of these is the idea that bhikkhus don't need to be ordained by a legitimate lineage, and that self-ordination is just as valid as traditional ordination. He also teaches that he is not only allowed to self-ordain, but he's also allowed to ordain other monks, and he is allowed to teach. He has authority to teach. And it should be noted that this is not just teaching basic, like the Eightfold Path or anything like that, the Four Noble Truths. We're talking about teaching an actual lineage. We know he's not allowed to ordain, nor ordain others, as bhikkhus because of the Dharmakutaka Vinaya. The Vinaya for Mahayana monastics lays down the rules for how Zen monastics are ordained. Bhikkhus cannot ordain by self-ordination or one person, as Mr. K does when he's ordaining the monastics in his tradition. It takes at least 5 fully ordained monks with valid ordinations. This means that all 5 monks were ordained with 5 monks that also have valid ordinations, and so on and so on. In valid Buddhist traditions as well. For the Japanese traditions that don't follow the Vinaya, a single teacher can ordain monks. But that teacher must not only be ordained in one of the 3 traditions, the Rinzai, Obaku, or Soto, but they must also have received Dharma transmission as well. Mr. Koio and his disciples, like Mr. Vasu, don't meet this requirement to be considered bhikkhus nor even monks in a Zen tradition. He has falsely ordained many people who believe that they are actual monks, as is the case of Mr. Vasu. The Buddha viewed lying about ordination and claiming to be a monk without proper ordination so serious that it was one of the reasons a person would be barred from actual ordination. If you'd done it before and then went to go on to try to be ordination, they would bar you from ordination. He viewed it as heinous as killing an arhat or raping a nun, which are two other acts that bar a person from entering the monastic Sangha. This shows that the Buddha took religious fraud seriously, and so should we Buddhists. Not only are his followers and himself not ordained, they do not follow the Pratimoksha, in this case it would be the Dharmaguptaka Vinaya, nor do they follow the 16 Bodhisattva precepts. The latter is needed to be a Bhikkhu, and the Bodhisattva precepts are needed to be a teacher, or even just an Unsuri, a novice monk within the Japanese traditions. One needs to receive transmission to ordain. He doesn't follow these rules because he believes that any vows that restrict behavior, this is Mr. Koio. Mr. Koio believes that any vows that restrict behavior are bad and aren't Buddhist, which is very contrary to Buddhist teachings. One of the cornerstones of Buddhist teachings is the precepts. But this might show why he's okay with religious fraud. One of the Buddhist vows that all take, no matter what the precepts they take, one of the vows that we all take, whether you're lay or monastic, or also even the Bodhisattva vows, is to not lie. A vow that Mr. K will not accept. It's not part. He has a couple of rules for his monastics, but it's not in there. Mr. Koio will not accept this because it will restrict behavior, which according to him is not Buddhist. Oddly, even though he's against rules and regulations that restrict behavior, he does have two rules. And again, for full disclosure, he has more than actually just these two rules. There's a couple more. But they are not part of any Vinaya or any other traditional rule set that is Buddhist. These two rules for his monks that do just that. One of the rules that basically affects behavior is that he requires his monks to attend, let's see here, because I actually wrote this. This is from his actual rules. To attend all practices with special exceptions, such as illness, being in the care of sick persons, travel, etc. And this is interesting because he often pretty much charges for everything except for meditation. Mr. Koio, he also requires his monks to wear their robes to all gatherings and when outside and representing the Sangha. I mention these rules because they not only restrict behavior, but they are part of the religious fraud. Based on the fraud and views on the precepts, an argument could be made that based on both the religious fraud that he practices and his views on precepts, an argument could be made that the Dhammapada group is not only not a Zen tradition, but is also not a Buddhist tradition. While that is not clear, what is clear is that Mr. Koio and his students are not Bhikkhus and do not belong to a Zen lineage. You may be asking, why would Mr. Koio want to have his students call themselves Bhikkhus and wear Buddhist monastic attire? How does it relate to religious fraud? Well, to me, it seems somewhat easy to see why Mr. Koio would want his students to call themselves Bhikkhu, and while not following the Vinaya. Mr. Koio uses the established name for ordained Buddhist monastics who follow the Pratimoksha, a universally accepted definition, by the way. And the reasons are many. for why he would use the term Bhikkhu instead of using something generic like monk, or creating even his own term. One of the reasons for calling monastic Bhikkhu, and also just using the language of Buddhism and Zen, is that he's using language to trick people into thinking he has a legitimate link to lineage, and he's part of the Buddhist tradition. Just this in itself is religious fraud, because at its heart it is designed to deceive. It also makes it easier to deceive people for monetary gain as well. Monks who are actually ordained, who follow Vinaya, are not allowed to work. So lay people, and sometimes even non-Buddhists, will give generously to monks and monastic institutions. This, sadly, has led to an influx of fake monks, even here in America, and a lot of major cities deceiving people for money. There are now laws across the globe, not just here in America, and these laws are in place to prevent this. And in Buddhist countries, there are strict laws against fake monks and wearing robes and deceiving people. These laws and regulations are not used to stop religious freedom, but protect against religious fraud. By using the honorific Bhikkhu and wearing the robes of the Chan Buddhist tradition, they not only deceive householders, but other monastics as well. There are ceremonies that are specifically for bhikkhus, such as the bi-monthly precepts recital, and through the deception they could gain access to these ceremonies, which are only for monastics. When I brought this up to Mr. Vasu Bandhu, he told me that he always tells people that he's not an actual bhikkhu and does not follow the precepts, and I took that initially at face value. Then I noticed that every video he is in where he's introduced or introduces himself as Bhikkhu Vasu Bandhu, a Zen monk, he never clarifies that he does not hold the monastic precepts, was not ordained in a monastic tradition, he does not, that he is married, and he is not part of a Zen tradition. Through his work with the Parliament of World Religions and the Arizona Faith Network, he is introducing himself to religious leaders and many traditions claiming to represent Zen Buddhism, when in fact this is false. The authority and influence is granted to him a lot because he is falsely claiming to be a bhikkhu and a Zen monk of an actual Zen lineage. I find this frightening because through his interaction with other religious leaders, he can influence how they perceive Buddhism and the Zen tradition that he is not a part of. This shows it could not only be for monetary reasons. This shows that the deception that they're doing could not only be for monetary reasons, but it also could be done for the authority, influence, and the power that these titles can grant. For instance, I shared that I can go in, if I'm dressed in robes and I'm visiting a sick person, I can easily walk in and nobody bothers me at all. They allow me to go into the room. But if I were to walk in there and be wearing a Hawaiian shirt and short shorts and whatever, and said, "Oh, I'm there," they might ask for ID or something like that. Wearing robes and carrying the title often grants access to certain things that you would not be granted without them. Mr. Vasu seems a nice lot, and I have no hate for him. But belief that religious freedom allows for fraud and deception is troubling and, in my opinion, wrong. To understand the Buddhist thoughts on robes in general, so I guess we're going to get into why it's not okay for them to wear to robes to dress up and falsely outwardly portray themselves in robes as Buddhist monks. To understand the Buddhist thoughts on robes in general, we can first look to the first instance of the creation of Buddhist monastic garb. There was a king who wanted to donate to the Buddha and his followers. But as the followers at the time wore the same robes as the sadhus and the sannyasins of the time, he didn't know who was a Buddhist monk and who was just a regular general monk sannyasin. So he requested the Buddha to come up with a distinctive garb so that Buddhist monks would be easily discernible from other monks. The Buddha agreed, and while walking with Ananda, he was by rice fields, and looking across the rice paddies, he decided to come up with a robe based on a similar pattern. And thus we get the first kesa. We kind of already know the Buddha's thoughts on whether someone should falsely wear Buddhist robes, as I talked about it earlier, and that he was against it. But let's look at contemporary Buddhist masters and what they say. In Japanese Zen, the okesa is considered the robe of Zen and is held with a deep reverence. In many traditions outside of Japan, one does not just buy a kesa, but sews it for oneself. Whether sewn or bought, though, it is agreed upon that the kesa must be received. And normally this happens during the receipt of precepts or as a gift from a gift to a person who has already been ordained and received the precepts. The unordained should not wear the kesa. Kodo Sawaki often expounded upon how precious the kesa was, or is. Many here in America, whether through lineage or the adoption of the tradition, have come to practice Kodo Sawaki's Nyohei tradition, or the Nyohei tradition that Kodo Sawaki adopted and made part of Soto Zen. Kodo Sawaki often stated that those who have not received the precepts should not wear the kesa. In the Tan tradition, where Mr. Koio has appropriated his robes, we have two modern Chinese teachers who would emphatically say that a person should not wear the monastic robes nor claim to be monastic when they have not received ordination. Master Sheng Yen has spoke on many occasions of not only the origin of the Chinese monastic robes in the Han and Tang dynasties, that they were robes worn by the poor during said dynasties, Han and Tang, and he also stated that while they were initially clothing of the poor, they have now been identified with monastics, and as they are now seen as monastic garbs, therefore lay people should not wear them. He even spoke about how Shaolin martial art tradition that sometimes uses modified monastic robes as their uniform. He said that those robes should not be worn outside of training or competition, so as to not deceive householders. Master Zhuan Hua of the Dharma Realm Association in the City of 10,000 Buddhas said that the unordained should also not wear Buddhist robes, and told stories of those that dressed in Buddhist robes and falsely claimed to be Buddhist monks falling into one of the many hills. Even the prominent secular Buddhist Stephen Batchelor, who was himself a Buddhist monk in both the Tibetan and Korean traditions before leaving and becoming a secular practitioner, stated that while he was trying to build a secular Buddhist monastic tradition, it has He says he is trying to build a secular Buddhist monastic tradition. They should not adopt the robes of existing Buddhist traditions. They should not call themselves Bhikkhu, and they should not portray themselves as those who have taken on the Vinaya, the monastic vows. It seems here it's quite evident. There are many other people who speak against people who have not received vows should not dress up in monastic robes. But it is quite evident that there's a consensus that non-ordained should not wear robes, especially in the Chan and Japanese traditions. And in those traditions, lay people have specific robes that they wear. Normally, they don't wear them outside of ceremonies, again, because they're similar to monastic robes and they don't want to be confused. In the case of Chan, because the robes somewhat resemble monastic garb, they are not to be worn out in public, so that householders, again, will not be deceived. And even though these lay robes still require, even though they are lay robes, they still require the receipt of the precepts from a transmitted priest within the lineage. A layperson cannot just choose to wear them. Besides robes being used to identify one as a monastic, they are also used often just to identify one's lineage as well. In Japanese tradition, we can easily identify one another, whether one is a Soto Rinzai or a Baku, based on the type of okesa they wear. This robe. I can even often tell a person's lineage tradition based on even just the rosary that they have. Robes help us identify between Chinese tradition, Korean tradition, the Vietnamese tradition, and of course the Japanese tradition. I can easily tell based on robes whether a person comes from a Korean tradition or not, and based on that, I might use an honorific for them, called like sunim, when I refer to them. Also, in the same line, I might refer to a Vietnamese, if I recognize a monastic wearing Vietnamese robe, I might refer to that Vietnamese monastic who is teaching as Thay, which means teacher. Robes are very important within the Buddhist tradition. And so, by appropriating them, it can lead to a lot of confusion and even distrust in monastics. A case in point, Mr. Vasu Bandhu is married, and if a lay person were to see him dressed in his robes, calling himself a Bhikkhu and being with his husband, being affectionate with his husband, that person witnessing this might think, why should I follow the precepts when even monks don't follow the precepts? That monk's not following the precepts, so why should I? They might see a monastic breaking the precepts and not somebody who is not a monastic breaking the precepts. The confusion and harm it does our religion is far greater than many could. It's far greater than I think many imagine. And it can be used, and is being used, for fraudulent activity. Even when we look outside of Zen and into other Buddhist traditions, we see almost identical views on non-ordained dressing up in the robes of monastic. Mr. Koio's desire to have his order dressed up as monastics is so is so bad, so damaging, because it is coupled with lies that he's telling people. When the Wan Buddhist movement, which I talked about a little bit earlier, when the Wan Buddhist movement came out, they initially dressed identical to the Korean Zen monastics. And because that led to confusion, and it could have led to fraud, they decided to create a distinct religious garb. This protected them from anybody claiming that they were pretending to be part of the traditional Korean Buddhists. The Won Buddhist movement has not shied away from its lack of lineage and has been open and honest about its founding, and should probably be the model for Mr. Koio and his Dhammapada tradition. The Won Buddhists, they have distinct garb, distinct robes, and they tell you right off the bat how they were founded, and there's nothing but transparency with them. So why can't they appropriate Buddhist attire? Well, aside from the moral and ethical issues, there's also the legal reasons. As New York, Seattle, Los Angeles, and many other cities have come up with laws to stop false monks. I know this is long-winded, and there's a lot to get through, and I apologize for that. But okay, I initially contacted Mr. Vasu, hoping for transparency, openness, and to stop, this deception going on. I just wanted to know. I didn't even know if he knew that he shouldn't be using the term Bhikkhu. And that led me down a big rabbit hole. But my goal here is not to well, first let me make it clear that this is not It's not an internal debate. This isn't two differing Zen sects saying, I'm more Zen than you, or anything like that. That is not it. For that to happen, he would have to be an actual Zen sect. And then if that was the case, then we wouldn't be having, even if I disagreed with him, we still would not be having this conversation. Because if he had an actual Zen lineage, then it would be fine. But this is somebody who has no Zen lineage. So I want to make sure that is clear, that this is not that type of debate. This is not an internal debate of me saying that, there's one right Zen and there's not. Because whether you're Rinzai Zen, Chan, or whatever, I'm uncomfortable with it as long as you actually belong to a Zen religion, a Zen tradition, sorry. But this man has never received transmission, never been taught to teach. So, and the fact that he is charging, he calls himself a Zen master, and he charges people to speak with a Zen master is disheartening and horrible. I am not trying to also, I'm not doing this to harm, hurt, or shut down the Dhammapada tradition. I'm doing this video to make sure that honesty prevails and to protect the Dharma and to protect lay people who might be interested in studying Zen Buddhism, who might be tricked by this person. Like I said many times in this video, if he wants to start his own religion, that's fine. But he can't appropriate another religion and use it for fraud. I'm also going to do, I'm doing this video to get the word out. I'm hoping that others will take this up too. Please contact, especially if you're, you speak Spanish or you're in Central and South America, contact the Dhammapada Sangha. Let them know that this isn't right. And contact also other monastics too. Feel free to contact the Parliament World Religions. There's on a faith network. If you believe that we shouldn't have someone representing us who doesn't belong to, who is falsely claiming to be a Bhikkhu and doesn't belong to a Zen tradition, even though he claims to be part of one, and thinks that religious freedom means there can be religious fraud. So yeah, contact them about Mr. Vasu Bandhu. Contact them about his. Please, take this over for me, because I'm going to do everything I can to protect the lay people and to protect the Dharma, but I don't know how much energy I have. I'm also doing this for the Parliament of World Religions, the Arizona Faith Network, and others, in case they had no clue, which I'm quite sure they didn't. Many of the people there don't come from a Buddhist tradition at all. Many of them are religious in other religions, and so I would like them to make decisions about their employee based on on the facts and not on lies or ignorance as well. So I apologize for any mistakes that I've made. I'm definitely just trying to get the truth out there and to stop religious fraud, and again, like I said, to protect the Dharma. So with that said, though, if I did make any mistakes, all harmful acts, words, and thoughts ever committed by me since of old, on account of beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, brought on me body, mouth, and mind, now I atone for them all. I thank all of you who got through this, and if somebody wants to contact me about this, feel free. Also, if somebody wants to translate this into Spanish too, that would be great. So, anywho, bye.